all the people that worked here, the different people that were working here generations, and this is where they gathered to do their little crying, and a lot of smoke and a lot of flames. When it was at its worst, it was all smoke and flames, and a lot of vehicles and a lot of people running around with all these guys with these bunker gears on.
Welcome to St. Albert, Ontario, a tiny town just south of Ottawa. Here, cheese is a way of life. This is the St. Albert Cheese Factory. For the young, a first job at the factory is a rite of passage. As many as 1 in 5 people in the village still work here, and after a death, a cheese plate appears at the door. But for this factory at least, an era has come to a fiery end.
And you say, wow, I wish I could have done a better job and not have them tear it all down like this, but we just couldn't do it.
In early February, the St. Albert Cheese Factory caught fire and burned to the ground. A century in the making, it took less than a day to bring it down. Aurel Constantino was in charge of the scene that day. He's been a volunteer firefighter for almost 4 decades. Now he's the section chief and works out of the fire station 1 town over. You might say he's a bit of an institution.
I was at church, and my pager went off, and I had it on in my coat pocket because I was at church, and I had it on vibrate, and I thought my heart pacer was going off. No, I answered to the call, and when I got the message, I was the first firefighter here at the fire hall. And as I was getting closer, I was getting to the St. Albert. I was getting more reports from the firefighters in St. Albert what was going on, and then I knew that I needed more help, and I started to wear my hat as a coordinator and tell dispatch, send me some more help.
A group of milk producers banded together to create the St. Albert Co-op in 1894. Once upon a time, cheese was a big money maker for the farmers in southern Ontario. They made cheese at home or hitched up their horse to haul their milk to the local factory. But while many of these factories went belly up over the years, St. Albert's kept right on curdling milk and making cheese for over 100 years. Now, the great-grandson of one of the founders is trying to keep that legacy going. Régent Ouimet was the factory manager in charge of several hundred employees for 2 decades. Then he hung up his hat and retired. He relaxed for 2 weeks, then the fire brought him back to work.
I want to talk about it because it was, it's like part of my family. It's still tough. It's something, let's say, I had myself to cry that day. Well, I'm a man. But I'm not the only one. Lots of people, they were taking it really tough.
And Régent has his work cut out for him. The company continues to make some cheese in a couple of smaller locations, but here at their main factory, they need to clear the rubble, rebuild the building, and order all new custom equipment. Timeline, at least a year. Nowadays, about 500 people live in St. Albert. Of that, about 120 either have no job or aren't working much. And that's a lot for a small town.
We always think about Oshawa and then GM plant. Well, Oshawa, might be 70,000. They're talking about 200 to 300 employees. There's a ratio established. When you talk about the ratio here, 110, 120 jobs, this size, it's way huge,
Francois Saint-Amour is the mayor of St. Albert and the 4 nearby towns. The municipality is committed to the factory, he says. They jump to help with extra office space and speedy building permits, because for this town, it's not just any business.
It's the co-op movement that they started in 1894. It was a bit different. Them at the time, too, being the first francophone co-op, too, maybe that old stigma of maybe French Canadians are not entrepreneurs or risk takers. They proved differently.
St. Albert is a small town, a town where everyone knows each other, a town where everyone could have smelled the smoke.
On Sunday morning, we open at 10, so I was putting stuff on the shelf, doing facing, and actually I didn't even notice the smoke because we're so, used to doing the same thing over and over again, right? And my husband came into the store and he noticed the smoke and he said, I think the cheese factory is on fire. It was like a big cloud. It was already too late.
Jeanette Bourgon owns the local convenience store with her husband. It's a place where you can send a letter, rent a movie, or even grab some candy. It's also the last place in town where you can buy cheese.
I order directly every day, and so they come in the morning at 5:30, get their coffee, they give me my cheese, and we're off for another day.
Every day, Jeanette sees a lot of people come through her door. She says the fire's been tough on the community.
They've applied for unemployment, but they do job sharing. So at least you have like 1 week that you work, and the other week you have unemployment. So I'm sure some will find some other place to work, and that's just normal life. I mean, you can't wait forever. Sometimes you do what you have to do, but hopefully everybody will fall back in place.
A lot of people are waiting for them to do just that. The company isn't making anywhere near the amount of cheese they usually do, and so the impact of the fire has fanned out beyond tiny St. Albert. Fans of the historic cheese, young and old, are going online to show their support.
This corporation was founded in St. Albert, and they have no intentions of moving away from St. Albert. Most of the directors and everybody, the owners of the co-op, all come from St. Albert, so they're tied into it. It's part of their heritage of the village here.
It's still hard for the people to understand that we have no cheese plant, but we're going to rebuild, and I'm sure for December, cross my finger, for Christmas we want to be open.